What if one of the most famous structures in human history had never existed, and by disappearing, changed the balance of the entire world? Imagine a planet where this colossal landmark is nothing more than a ghost, a whisper in the wind. This is not just the story of a missing wall in China. It's the story of how our borders, our empires, and even our modern world would be unrecognizably different. This is the story of a world without the Great Wall. For millennia, the vast, open plains of northern China were a landscape of constant motion. Nomadic tribes, masters of the horse and bow, thrived in this unforgiving environment. To the south, agricultural dynasties rose and fell, seeking stability against the unpredictable currents from the steppe. In our history, the response to this pressure was monumental. Emperors, starting with Qin Shi Huang, began a project of almost unimaginable scale. A unified barrier of stone and earth, a line drawn against chaos. It was a statement of order, a symbol of an empire's will to endure. But in this timeline, the will falters. The grand vision never coalesces. Fragmented defenses are built, then abandoned. Political division and economic strain leave the northern frontier exposed. There is no Great Wall, just scattered forts and watchtowers, islands in a sea of grass, easily bypassed, easily overwhelmed. The line is never drawn. The consequences are immediate and relentless. Without a unified defense, the raids are no longer just raids. They become incursions, then invasions. Nomadic confederations, like the Xiongnu, don't just harass the border. They penetrate deep into the heartland of ancient China. The capital itself is threatened, not once, but repeatedly. Dynasties that, in our world, enjoyed centuries of stability are caught in a cycle of constant warfare. Their resources, once dedicated to art, philosophy, and infrastructure, are now poured into a perpetually failing defense. China becomes a different kind of civilization. It is more militarized, its society forged in the crucible of permanent conflict. But paradoxically, it is less centralized. Warlords rise in the north, acting as buffer states, gaining power and autonomy that the emperor cannot challenge. The dream of a single, unified state under heaven becomes just that, a dream. The cultural and political gravity of the south grows as the north becomes a contested, dangerous frontier. And the legendary Silk Road, that great artery of commerce and ideas, it becomes unstable, frequently severed. Trade shifts to maritime routes much earlier, or it withers altogether. The flow of goods, knowledge, and people between East and West is choked before it can truly begin. And then come the Mongols. In our history, the Great Wall, even in its various states of repair, presented a significant obstacle. It channeled armies, slowed advances, and bought precious time. In this world, there is no such barrier. The Mongol expansion across Asia accelerates with terrifying speed. Genghis Khan's armies don't just conquer northern China. They wash over it like a tidal wave. The process is faster, more brutal, and more complete. China, already fragmented, does not fall as a single entity. It is consumed piecemeal. It becomes a vast, contested zone, a battleground for Mongol successor states, rather than the stable, resilient core of civilization we know. The Yuan dynasty isn't a foreign rule over a unified China. It's a chaotic integration into a much larger, pan-Eurasian nomadic empire. This changes everything. The center of political and military power shifts from the settled cities of the south to the mobile capitals of the steppe. This new reality sends powerful ripples across the globe. Technology transfer happens differently. Gunpowder, which in our world was refined within China before spreading, is now a tool perfected on the battlefields of a wider, more integrated Mongol empire. Its dissemination is faster, less controlled. It arrives in Europe not as a curiosity, but as a mature weapon of war, accelerating the decline of feudal knights and castles. The compass and printing press, innovations of a stable song dynasty, might develop differently, or their spread could be altered entirely, changing the course of Europe's age of discovery. Without a strong, unified, and relatively isolated China to act as a counterweight, the world develops on a different axis. The intellectual and philosophical exchange is also transformed. European explorers like Marco Polo wouldn't be visiting the court of a great Khan ruling over China. They would be entering a fluid, multicultural, and far more volatile world. Ideas from the East might reach Europe sooner, but they would be filtered through a different lens, the lens of the Mongol-dominated steppe, not the sophisticated bureaucracy of a Chinese dynasty. The very concept of globalization would look different. It wouldn't be a story of a rising West encountering a mysterious East. It would be a more violent, more chaotic collision of civilizations, happening centuries earlier. The power dynamics that shaped the last 500 years are scrambled. Perhaps the maritime powers of Europe, facing a more formidable and technologically advanced Eurasian landmass, never achieved the global dominance they did in our timeline. Their colonial ambitions might be checked at the shores of the Mediterranean. So what does the modern world look like? Let's speculate. There might be no single entity called China. Instead, the region could be a tapestry of smaller states, a mosaic of cultures, some Han, some Turkic, some Mongol, a permanent fusion born from centuries of conflict and coexistence. Or perhaps a hybrid empire, a Sino-Mongol superpower, would dominate Asia, its culture and language a blend we can barely imagine. The great powers of the 20th century would be completely different. There would be no sleeping giant to awaken. The dynamics of the world wars and the Cold War would be unrecognizable. Who would be the superpowers? A dominant Eurasian federation, a more powerful Ottoman or Persian successor state, a collection of European maritime republics that never coalesced into nation-states? The borders on our maps, the languages we speak, the alliances that define our geopolitics, all of it would be redrawn. The world would be fundamentally alien to us. We look back at the Great Wall as a symbol, a colossal monument to perseverance, to a nation's desire to protect its identity. But its existence did more than just keep people out. It created a space, a crucible, where a unique and enduring civilization could flourish in relative isolation. By defining a border, it helped define a culture. So we are left with a final, lingering question. Was the Great Wall merely a defense, a shield against the outside world? Or was its very presence the critical element that allowed our history to unfold the way it did? Was it a line of protection, or was it the line that drew the map of the world we know today? Thanks for watching. If you enjoy exploring the great what-ifs of history, consider subscribing and joining our journey into the worlds that might have been.